Hi, I'm Diana Giselle Yanez, host of Highly Sensitive Money. I'm a money coach, certified financial planner, and a highly sensitive person who brings money and social justice together. If you're someone who feels deeply, can endlessly think through how one decision affects everything else, or has ever struggled with all the things that traditional financial thinking leaves out, you're in the right place. In this show, I chat with highly sensitive people on how they handle their money, and with money experts on how they cultivate social justice in their work. Questions? Please go to allthecolors.net and schedule a free 30-minute call. And I'm happy to share resources on investment management, money coaching, workshops, or anything else money and social justice related. Join us in this episode as we explore money and sensitivity while honoring that all of our well-being is interconnected. In today's episode, I sit down with River Nice, a financial educator who brings an anti-capitalist lens to money. River shares their journey from working in tech to becoming a financial advisor and eventually choosing to step away from one-to-one advising to create group programs that center community, education, and solidarity. We talk about the courage it takes to walk away from a steady income in order to build work that's truly aligned with your values, and how River has designed courses that not only teach financial basics, but also reimagine tools like credit scores and savings through a lens of collective care. One of my favorite insights River offers is their analogy between money and gender, both human-made systems that can harm us, but that we can also reclaim and reshape as tools for liberation. River, I'm so excited to have you on today as a guest at Highly Sensitive Money.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm pumped to be here.
And I was just thinking of how did we meet? Because this podcast is for highly sensitive people, and I feel like people love context. I'm going to share context.
Great.
So we met through a mutual friend in CFP, Jessica Gotel, when my first time I was here in Mexico City, the first time that I arrived and that I was like, oh, I really like this city. And what I remember the most about our meeting, River, is that you told me your story of how you became a self-employed. And I think it was a decision within 2 weeks. And you were telling me you could take 2 years to make it, or you could take 2 weeks, just go for it if you're going to do it. And at the end of that year, so 6 months later, I went into self-employment, but I wanted to go into self-employment 5 years from then when I had a perfect plan. So you were really just be a quick start and just start. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear it. That's what I remember from that Zoom call was you were interested in self-employment. You thought you would go for it eventually. And I was like, just do it. You're going to be so good at it. So I'm glad. I'm happy for you to be living, there's definitely the challenges of the self-employed life, right? But I love how much autonomy I have. And I love seeing that for other folks too.
Yeah, I just came on and told you oh, I'm working on this new project, and it completely absorbed me. And that's actually one of the things that I love the most. It's getting to choose my clients, getting to choose my time off, and getting to choose the projects and just going with what really flows for me.
I feel like I can do so much better work when I get to decide what is most exciting. If I have to do something that I'm not so excited about, probably the quality is not going to be as high if someone else is just making me do it.
Right. And the dream is to be able to outsource the things that I'm not excited about to people who are excited about it, and to be able to pay them well for it.
That's the dream for the whole world, right? We all just do the stuff that we're good at and that we like to do. and get paid well for it. Yes. Get all our needs met. Absolutely.
So I would love for you to introduce your work and how you arrived at where you currently are as an anti-capitalist financial planner.
I will do my best to be succinct. I love to talk. So my name is River Nice. My pronouns are they, them. I have been in personal finance since, 2017. So 8 years. That's wild. I got interested in finance after Trump was elected the first time. For me, being, a white upper middle class person, I had so much privilege to not notice how much oppression was baked into our society. And so Trump being elected the first time was was a huge wake up call for me that the world was not the way that I thought it was. And I was working in tech at the time and not loving it. It was not really a good fit for me. And I wanted to find something that I could do and something that I could end up in self-employment. And my partner at the time had a lot of credit card debt from her gender transition. And I just helped her make a plan for that. It felt intuitive to me. I think because I had had so much education from my dad, who was an accountant and like overall general finance guy, something about figuring out a budget and a debt plan and a credit repair plan felt intuitive to me in a way that I did not realize that other people did not have that baseline like knowledge and confidence. So that's what got me interested in personal finance, was to help trans people and queer people like survive. If I fast forward the story, I had a job was helpful in some ways, not a good fit in a lot of ways. I left and started my own company. I was working with clients one-on-one as a financial planner. But the deeper I got into doing the work, the more that I realized that the people that I tend to work with don't necessarily need one-on-one advice as much as they need education and confidence, and just, yeah, like to feel empowered to make their own decisions. And also, the deeper I got into personal finance, the more I was like, wow, capitalism's messed up. And like every financial structure in the US is designed to hurt people. So if I want to be resisting all of those structures, I think I have to start by resisting the like individualistic nature of racial capitalism. So I pivoted my work into group educational work. So I don't call myself a financial advisor or a financial planner anymore. I am now kind of a financial educator. It's just funny. I always feel like I'm making up a new job. Like at each stage of my career, I'm like, this is the thing I want to do. What title would convey that to people? I don't know. I'm just going to do the thing. But most of my work now is in group settings and is focused on educating and empowering people to take care of themselves and to hopefully start thinking about the tools of like money and debt and credit scores and insurance, all those things, as tools that we can use for collective well-being instead of only in our nuclear families.
Wow. Okay. I had no idea you had moved away from one-to-one work. Do you have any one-to-one clients at all?
I have ramped down to just one or two one-on-one clients right now. Occasionally, a previous client, I can just do a little bit of hourly work when I already have the relationship and the context for their situation. But I actually deregistered as a financial advisor. So I'm no longer legally allowed to give individual investment advice.
Okay. That's a big decision. Yeah. I know that I recently I like in the past year, I really registered to give investment advice on my own, not doing it with someone else. And there was a lot of contradiction of like, am I really going to be helping people with money make more money? And I figured out my way through it by like, because I focus on socially responsible investing to like such an extreme. I'm like, oh yeah, I definitely want to be doing this. But I also love that you were like, actually, I don't want to. Could you share more about what that decision was like to like let go of somewhat the certainty of like the one-to-one income?
Yeah, totally. It's something that I had tension about for years, I think. When I first left my because I did have a job at a national broker dealer for a while. That's how I started my career in finance. And when I left that job, I knew that I did not want to be managing investments for clients because that's such a big, I saw how my former boss was had to be on call all of the hours that the stock market was open, if anything happened to the stock, at least that's the way he did business. And also it's just not the most interesting part of finance to me. I think it's very important that some of us who are leftists and financial professionals be engaging with the stock market and helping our clients and communities have a harm reduction approach to the stock market. I think that work is so important. It's just not what I'm most interested in. I'm so much more interested in budgeting and emergency savings funds and credit scores and kind of the slightly more mundane day to day. So I knew I didn't want to manage assets on behalf of clients, but I still registered myself and my solo firm when I left the job and started my own firm so that I would be allowed to give investment advice. And I did get the business to a point that I was making very comfortable money, and my partner was able to quit their job and do some recovery after years of terrible jobs and terrible work situations. But just as I was spending more time with more clients over the years, I knew that I wanted to help. How do I say what I'm trying to say? The other thing about being a more traditional financial advisor who wants to help clients with their investments and with their plans long term is that you can only max out at a certain number of clients in your career. And I knew that I wanted to help more people than that. I wanted to have a broader impact than that, especially when the clients that I work with tend to be queer people in their 20s and 30s who are not very high wealth. I think that I can have a large impact in terms of quantity of touching people's lives instead of just going really deep on like 50 people's lives. So there's that aspect to it that I was trying to figure out how to help more people throughout my career. There's also the aspect to it of, yeah, like I was saying, what types of work, what are the sides of personal finance that I'm more interested in? And then another really important piece that's more personal to how I want to design my life for myself is that about a year and a half ago, my dad had a traumatic brain injury and he lives in Florida and I lived in Philly. So I was suddenly traveling frequently and supporting my mom, and life just looked a lot different, you know? Thankfully, he has recovered very well and my parents no longer need regular support from me, which is great. Big relief for everybody. But in that time period, I had to really slow down my business to support how much time and energy I needed to put towards my family. And so that kind of accelerated what I had been thinking, which was, I think I want to build a life where I am teaching a couple of classes on a regular basis instead of being available to support one-on-one clients on like, like it just makes the work week look different. And it gives me a little bit more control over how I spend my time. Similarly to your self-employment journey, I was like, yeah, I'll get there eventually. I'll take a couple of years. But then all this stuff with my dad, I was like, I have to do it right now. Like I have to make a change for my own energy and well-being and mental health. So at the end of 2024, I did my deregistration and, gave up a third of my revenue, maybe half of my revenue. So now it's this year is figuring out what the business looks like here and how to keep making my work sustainable for myself and my family and my community. But I will say I do really like the cadence of my work life now. And I have already been able to put a lot more effort into improving the classes that I teach and developing new classes that I can offer.
I love this. I love your like fierceness around I want to serve everyone or I want to serve all of my community. And working with 50 clients is not going to be sufficient for what I want to do. And just the integrity of you, like will happily walk away from money if it's not aligned with what I want to do. I love how you're really modeling what does it look like for us to live beyond capitalism, beyond extractive work, like what are the trade-offs, and just being wide, very like open-eyed as you're making those trade-offs and knowing that we have more choices. Because I think a lot of the times it's so easy to fall under the spell of capitalism and be like, nothing else is possible.
Absolutely. And it's funny, sometimes I have a little bit of that, like, it's a feeling somewhere in the ballpark of imposter syndrome where it's like, oh, I'm literally a financial professional and I made the choice to give up money. Like I made the choice to go into debt. I made the choice to use all of my saving, But when I do actually reflect on what my values are and how I want to be interacting in the world, like, of course, I'm going to give up money before I give up other things like my relationships and support for other people and living the way that I want to live on the day to day.
And let's come back to the courses that you're providing. What does it look like? What is the entryway? Who are you targeting this for?
Yeah. The main thing that I'm offering right now is a program that I called Take Control of Your Money, because that's how I want people to feel. It's a 12-week live virtual program. So everybody meets with me on Zoom once a week for 12 weeks. And in those sessions, we work through all of the topics that we should have been taught about personal finance in high school. So you could also think of it as like the list of topics that would go into a financial plan that could be delivered by a financial planner. But we start with how to talk about money. I offer some frameworks and some tools and resources to take care of yourself emotionally enough that you can talk to yourself, talk to me, talk to people in your life about money. Then we do a couple weeks on budgeting. I kind of break down like debt and savings and spending and giving, different budgeting tools and frameworks. Then I get into like credit scores and how to buy a house and insurance and the stock market and retirement planning. But all of these topics, as I'm teaching them, I am teaching them through a lens of resisting capitalism. So like when we do the week on credit scores, it's not just like, here's how to be good and correct about credit scores. It's okay. Credit scores are an oppressive system that were invented by the United States in the 80s. They do not define if you're a good or bad person. And we can think about them as a mutual aid tool. So if one person has the privilege of a high credit score and the other person has been oppressed and has a low credit score because of obstacles they've faced, and the person with the low score needs to access housing, the person with the high score can co-sign that rental lease so that the person with the low score can access the housing. And so that person with the high score is like literally in solidarity. They are on the line with the person with the low score, because if the rent doesn't get paid, it could hurt both of their credit scores. And what a beautiful way to actually show true solidarity someone in your life, to say, I am in this with you financially. And obviously not every stranger is going to hop into that kind of relationship, but throughout talking about all of these financial systems and tools that were developed by the state and are enforced by the violence of the state, we can get creative about how we're interacting with them and what we're willing to do for each other.
Yeah, that's such an interesting point. And it's, I mean, for me as a financial planner, I'm like, that sounds really scary. But then also, it's a risk that someone's willing to take for another. And a lot of the times in these very individualistic systems, there's this myth of like, if I am taken care of, it doesn't matter whether other people are taken care of. And that's not true. We're very social beings. Our mutual well-being impacts the individual.
And the more people you add to it, the easier it gets, right? So if it's just two people that are sharing the risk of whether their rent's going to get paid, it's tough. It's easier than just one person. But then what if you add a few more people to the like collective of we all care about each other? Now, if we're going to miss rent one month, that's a group of people that can band together to make the rent get paid. So it's not putting all of the pressure on just the one or just the two people to make sure everybody stays housed. So we can get creative about it. So that's just an example of how I'm bringing the political lens to teaching all the basics of personal finance through the program. But I really love what I've done with this program. It's so fun to get to know a group of people over 3 months and see them all working through these topics that have felt so confusing and hard to interact with up until this point. And I like that I can have the scheduled class time and the like agenda and objectives for each of those classes, but also be able to support over email all of my participants as we go. So maybe after the session about credit scores, one person is like, hey, I have this very specific situation with my credit. What do you think? We still have time to be able to have some email support about that outside of the session. So it's like both there's the opportunity to practice talking about things during the live session with everyone, and I can still be supportive to make sure everybody gets what they need.
Yeah. And I love that you're focusing on education and competence, because a lot of the times that's what people need more than anything else. How long are the classes? Are they an hour, 2 hours, 5?
2 hours with a 10-minute break in the middle, because it is a long time to be screen.
Yeah, sitting and talking about money. And that's okay. So 2 hours over 12 weeks. That's a commitment.
It is.
And how many people are in each course?
I try to keep class size under 15 people so that it's not Zoom chaos. But I usually run 2 or 3 groups at the same time. So that way there's like, we can make scheduling work across different time zones, and so that there's no limited seating problem. I don't like a false scarcity of like, you have to sign up for this, so there's going to be no spots left for you. Like, that's never how I want to operate. So 3 cohorts usually at the same time, and then somewhere between 5 and 15 people per cohort.
Okay. I love that you've been able to figure that out for yourself. I know I started with group coaching myself, and like I never had the audience to do it, but I also learned that I didn't have the like energetic bandwidth.
Totally. It's
for it only.
Very different.
It's very different. It's like, I love the one-to-one. That's where I feel like, but I can hear how like you've created this structure that moves people along, while also having the care for them to be in the class and to feel like they can be there, and like their cognitive cortex is on. I can imagine all of them, like if they need to say something because they're feeling dysregulated, you're not going to be like, no, we have to go through our topics. Like you can't be dysregulated here. Like you're like, no, we're here.
Of course, of course. And I've also built in like private reflective journaling into most, if not all, of the classes because so much comes up emotionally and energetically for people as we are engaging in these topics. So, like, there has to be space, like you said, in the group to be like, hey, I feel, I'm having feelings. Please, group, support me. That's welcome. And there's always time, usually at the beginning and end of each session, for like, okay, we're all going to take 2 minutes to journal about how we're feeling right now because that needs time and care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I imagine that by the time that people join this class, they've already developed a relationship with you through all of the work that you've put out, so that they're coming in like, this is a person that I trust, and this is a place where I can start to get my feet under me as I talk about finances. So I'm so happy that you exist and that you're providing this, like, truly,
Thank you
deeply.
so much. Yeah, the trust is so important to me, and I'm so grateful that I get to have so many people trust me with this. Money is so huge and so hard and so emotional. And a lot of my clients are coming with a lot of money trauma, as most of us are, right? But it's really cool to get to help people learn learn information that has been denied to them and hopefully start to reorganize how they orient themselves towards money in a way more useful to them and their loved ones.
You said something about helping people redefine their relationship with money, because a lot of the times, as anti-capitalists, people can just be like, money evil, not going to talk about it. What are some of the tools that you use to help people reframe that, move through that?
Yeah. The analogy that I really like as a trans non binary person is, to me, money is very analogous to gender in that this is something that is invented by humans kind of to oppress other humans. Like, gender's kind of fake, money's kind of fake, except that they're both very real because they affect us constantly and they affect how we interact with other people and how we move through the world. But money and gender only matter in the case of like how it impacts our lives, which is going to come from other people most of the time and from the state. Like, I'm just very aware all the time of how, like, the US government, particularly, is like a violent entity that is out to harm people. And they use money to do that and all of the different structures of finance, right? And kind of same with gender, right? That's, I mean, it's very top of mind in this political moment right now, but like policing the gender of human beings is such a tool for state violence. So these things are both hypothetical and meaningless, except that they're very, very real because the state is trying to enforce it with violence all the time. So if that is how we decide to think of both of these things, then how do we want to interact with them, right? I want to use gender as a fun tool to play with and to broaden other people's ideas of what a human can be. I kind of want to do the same with money. I want to use it as a tool to broaden my idea and other people's ideas of what life can be like. So instead of feeling like there is one correct way to be a man or be a woman, or there's one correct way to have money or do money, it's just like, okay, this thing was invented not to help me, and yet I'm stuck using it. So how do I want to do that? And it can be different person to person, and it can be different day to day.
I love that. Again, I'm just going to repeat that. This thing was invented not to help me, and yet I have to interact with it. And this is just like a geeky aside, but have you heard of the Left Hand of Darkness?
No.
It's a sci-fi book by Ursula Le Guin about this world where gender doesn't exist because people are, I guess the word is neutral. except for like a short season during the month when they go either into male or female genitalia, depending on who's around them. And the entire society is very different. Like, if there's no women to oppress, then there's no men to uphold.
Mm-hmm.
And just like the internalized misogyny of this person that's interacting with the society. And it makes me think, like, what would it be like, or what was it like for European colonists to come into contact with organizations or tribes that didn't have money, that were much more into collective care, not to like put them up on a pedestal, but that must have been really different.
Yeah.
Just kind of like, there's ways that people have organized themselves without money. And right now, because the entire world has been colonized by this structure, this power system, we can't really hide from it, but we can still imagine something different. So again, I want to come back to what you were saying about lending your credit score to someone. It feels so like sacrilegious. Like, literally, it feels like it's like the most personal thing you can lend someone. Like, one of my best friends, we will talk about sex, but she will not talk about money with me. And she's very open about it. She's like, you're a financial planner. Like, why would I share with you what's the most intimate thing? You know?
Totally.
It's not personal. It's just that loaded. It's just that loaded.
Yep. Yeah, there's so much stigma to it. And I get that reaction from people most of the time when I'm like, hey, we could all be sharing our credit scores with each other. People are like, but then, and a question that I get sometimes when I teach this at like one-off workshops instead of in my 12-week program, I'll be like, hey, if you have the privilege of a high credit score, you can, co-sign something for somebody. And then I'll have somebody ask, well, how do I then hold that other person accountable to make sure that they pay things so that I'm not harmed by it? And I'm like, that's the wrong question, my friend. We are talking about solidarity here. We are talking about, I will put myself on the line for you. And especially for those of us like me who were raised with access to money and who still have like financial support around me, I'm never going to risk homelessness. That's never a risk in my life because of the family that I come from and the resources that we are privileged to have. So if my best friend has a risk of like actual homelessness, I don't see an alternative except to put myself on the line with her and say, if something goes wrong for you, I will literally put money towards it and or take the hit with you. So it still has to be appropriate for what the relationship is or what the surrounding support is, right? I could see like two people supporting each other with credit scores, again, if they had a community around them to be like, okay, here's where the money will come from if the one person can't pay. But otherwise, it is like me and my best friend, like this is what chosen family is to me, is like literally putting money on the line for each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also, it has to be balanced with the idea of like putting on your own oxygen mask. I feel like that always needs to be a part of collective well-being. We can't forget individual well-being. I'm not looking for people to become martyrs. I don't want to become a martyr.
Right. Yeah. So, if it's me doing the co-signing, I can't do it for 10 people all at the same time, right? Because then that's risking everybody. Like if I can't cover multiple things going wrong at once, then that's setting up everybody to be precarious together. But if I can find stability and interdependence, that's what I'm looking for. Yeah. The martyrship thing comes up a lot, especially from my white queer clients who are like, okay, I see how the world is bad. I see how I have white privilege and what that does for me economically. But maybe if I could just suffer enough, or maybe if I could just have zero needs, then I can finally be good and like racism will be solved. And I'm like, oh, honey, that's not how that works. So I'm with you. And something that I talk about with my clients in one of the first weeks of the program is looking out for the dynamics of like savior or victim or persecutor. If I notice that I'm feeling like someone else is a victim and I need to be the savior, that's not seeing their full humanity or my full humanity. I need to take a breath and remind myself that we are both adults with full autonomy who can fully make decisions, right? It's too easy to fall into that dynamic of savior and victim or persecutor and victim.
Are you aware of there's this tool called the empowerment triangle?
No.
I would recommend like taking a look at that. So it's usually when there's a prosecutor, there's a victim, and then there's also a rescuer, right? Someone's doing something bad for me. So someone else is going to come and rescue me. And the empowerment triangle actually asks each person to transform into something else, which is exactly what you're talking about. I think you intuitively got into this like psychological dynamic, but it turns the prosecutor actually into a challenger. If
Mm.
I'm doing something to someone else, it's because maybe I see a way that they could be doing things differently. But
Yeah, that's super
the
cool.
triangle, yeah,
Mhm.
it's a different way. It's a different tool to add in, and like more psychological context of like if I love that the victim actually becomes a creator. They can create something different. It's tapping into their own sense of agency. Like no one's going to come and rescue me, and that's okay because I don't need someone to rescue me. I have say even in a system that's so oppressive. A quote that I love is by Viktor Frankl, where he says, at the end of the day, like we can decide what things mean. We can give meaning to our own life, no matter how oppressive the conditions are. Not to applaud oppression, but just to be like, it's real and we have choices. I want to switch over into talking about collective transformation because I feel like your course also goes into it and you've also thought a lot about this. Is there like a specific tool that you can share about how you address that?
What I'm trying to do is just get people to think about personal finance tools as tools that we can use in different ways, right? So the credit score example, also like thinking about my emergency savings fund. I can try to have enough like liquid savings in a high yield savings account so that I can handle my own emergency, but I could also plan for someone I love to have an emergency as well and see if I can have enough money for each of us to have an emergency at the same time, but then not aim to have so much money in my emergency savings fund to prevent any bad thing from ever happening, because that's not how it works. Money can't actually prevent hardship ever. And I don't want to slip into hoarding about it. But I could just think about each of these like classic personal finance tools, like because we're taught, the credit score is just for you, the emergency savings fund is just for you and your nuclear family. Like, so just how can we use these tools for more than just ourselves? With the goal being that if we find some stability for ourselves, we then spread that stability out from us and share the stability with other people in an interdependent network. But in terms of tools, I know you had Jasmine Rashid on the podcast, and her book is amazing. That's like my top recommendation for people who are like, oh my gosh, I don't have to just hate money. I can think about how to use it for collective good. I'm like, yeah, go read Jasmine's book. It's rad as hell.
True, 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 true. Yeah, the activist toolbook. I love it. The activist playbook, I think it's called.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Financial Activist Playbook. Yeah, it's so good.
Another question that I have for you is how do you serve specifically the trans community, the queer community?
Yeah. Something that people don't always realize is that personal finance is different for queer and especially trans people. I think the most obvious financial difference might be like starting a family. Most cis straight couples are able to start a family the old fashioned way. And of course, it still comes with medical bills because the US is a nightmare. But it's it's kind of got that regular path forward that people can see. Whereas for us, sometimes we can have kids the old fashioned way, but sometimes we need to pay for fertility support, or we need to figure out adoption, which can also be very expensive. Or I won't even get into surrogacy because that's very expensive and complicated. But there's a lot of other stuff as well that is different for us. For trans people, particularly, of course, there is our actual transitions. If we want and can have a medical transition, that costs money, and that is a whole insurance situation. There's obviously navigating the health insurance of it all. But another weird thing that financial advisors might not realize, if you haven't worked with trans clients, is that if I am going to apply for life insurance or disability insurance, I have to apply as either male or female. And the rate of what I'm going to be charged for the insurance is going to be different depending on whether I am male or female. Now, the insurance companies are figuring out that trans people exist over the last 10 years, but they each have a different policy for how they're going to look at me and decide if I am male or female. My identity is non-binary. My body was assigned female at birth. My body on the outside right now looks like a man. So what are you going to decide? And now sometimes when I explain that, people are like, oh, you should be able to apply as trans to get life insurance. But the problem is, if the insurance companies start basing their actuarial tables on trans life expectancy, that's not going to look good for us. And then my premiums are going to be too expensive for me to afford. So there's this weird, like,
I want to pause there for people who may not be tracking. So the actuarial tables are like what the life expectancy is for someone, what the health costs are for someone, and the trans community, because they've been so targeted, have a lower life expectancy. There's a higher suicide rate. There's a lot of more like mental health issues and medical issues that come with being part of the trans community, which is why the actuarial tables would make this so much more expensive. And it's not inherent to being trans. It's inherent to being trans in this existing climate.
Yeah, thanks for explaining that. I got ahead of myself. Like also included in that lower life expectancy rate is just the higher murder rate. So yeah, so not just inherent to being trans, but to being trans here and now, life expectancy is lower. And when the insurance company wants to make sure that they are going to profit, and when they have to, pay out money when someone dies, if someone's expected to die sooner based on their math, they're going to charge us a higher premium so that they're still overall making a profit.
And I want to stay on this train just to talk about how oppressive gender is, because men usually have to pay more for health insurance, life insurance, disability insurance, because men are often taught to suppress emotions, which can make you sick. Mm-hmm. And women tend to live longer because of like more emotional support. And also men tend to be in more violent accidents. Mm-hmm. Just like another way that they're also like, what does it mean to be a man, and like taking more risk. I know, like living in Mexico right now, so many people's stories are like, yeah, I broke my foot, but I didn't want to be called whatever it was. So then I would just pretend that my foot wasn't broken. And then like all kinds, and like that is such a toxic part of masculinity for men themselves. And life insurance is not in denial about that. Like the insurance companies, they don't care whether it's right or wrong. They're taking it into account because they want to make a profit.
Exactly. It's such a mess. It's so messed up.
Yeah, and I cut off your train of thought, but we were just talking about like the disability life insurance.
Right. Yeah. So for trans people, I mean, even just smaller things like I legally changed my first name. For me, my credit reports all figured it out and updated to my new name, and it's no problem. I've had other clients, when they legally change their name, suddenly their credit history disappears as if it didn't exist in the first place. And then we have to play games with all three credit bureaus to figure out how to not let that ruin their credit, that they just changed their first name. So there's just all these things that you wouldn't notice if you weren't living it, that I think sometimes people don't realize are barriers. And, I'm talking about trans and queer people because that's my experience in my community and who I tend to serve. But I think it's true for any marginalized identity. There's going to be little things of how the system fails or intentionally oppresses people that you wouldn't know if you weren't living it and trying to navigate the day-to-day of the personal finance of that person. And then just, I guess my last thought about trans and queer people, especially in this political moment, is I'm trying to get everybody to write their will right now, to write their estate plan. So the estate plan is the legal document that includes a will, which is the one that we know from TV, but also includes things like naming someone to be your power of attorney and naming someone to be your medical proxy. So these are the people that can make decisions on your behalf if you are ever determined to be incapable of making the decisions for yourself. And I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist here, but the way that things are going for trans people in the US right now, I'm very concerned that at some point we could just start being declared unfit to care for ourselves if they're trying to pull the angle of trans people are inherently mentally ill. So I want to make sure that I have written down and legalized who would then be legally in charge of me. So it's a nightmare, but it is some action that we can be taking right now to, at least start with freewill.com as a resource to start writing the will for free. If you can afford an attorney in your state, look into it. But there are just all of these extra expenses for people who are marginalized and oppressed. And that's how the system's designed.
I love that you're giving these very clear action steps, because it can be so easy to just worry. And worry can be such a spiral that takes us down. And again, just a reminder, we have agency. We're not victims. We are creators. We can go and do something about it. Maybe it won't protect us from everything, but that's not part of being human. There is no life that you can live that protects you from everything.
Exactly. Something I talk about with my clients, and I wonder if you do the same with yours. When we start worrying about what could happen, I'm like, okay, literally, what would you do? If you lost your job tomorrow, literally, what would be the next thing? Maybe you ask someone to help you update your resume. Maybe you ask around who's hiring. Maybe you go move out of your place and move in with someone else for a while. There are steps that we can prepare for, I like that you said creators. Here's what I will do for myself in that situation. Because sometimes it's true that it's I don't know what I would do. But oftentimes, if you're able to take some deep breaths, get a little bit centered and grounded, and then think through, literally, what would I do? Okay, maybe I would talk to this person. Maybe I would explore those connections. Maybe I would make some posts on LinkedIn, So I think thinking that through when you're anxious and finding maybe one step you can take now to make it easier if you do find yourself in that situation, it gives you something to do, some agency to exert instead of just spiraling all night about it.
Definitely. It's I don't remember where I heard this, but action it counteracts overwhelm. And it can be a tiny action. It could be, like you said, looking at my resume, just finding it. I don't even have to do anything to it, but where is it?
Yes.
Did I update it 10 years ago? Where is it? I will update it tomorrow, or I will think about, just tiny little things. So, River, this has been such a wonderful conversation. I'm going to get close to us wrapping up. And a lot of the times with guests, it's I'm marshaling them from let's talk about money. Let's talk about sensitivity. Let's talk about social justice. And with you, I feel like we talked about it all at the same time. I don't know if you identify as highly sensitive or if you know people who do, but I imagine that the way that you created your course really takes into account how highly sensitive people may need more time for processing, may need more subtlety. And before I just assume that blankly, is that true, or how do you bring that in?
Yeah, actually, I specifically hired a consultant to help me improve my program to be more friendly to ADHD folks and autistic folks. So having time for reflection, me repeating myself as much as people need me to. I have a workbook that people are filling out as we go through the program to help make something a little more tangible than if I'm just talking for 2 hours. Having breaks, there's lots of stuff that I have specifically implemented to be friendly to neurodivergent people.
Yeah, I love hearing that. I don't know if the trait of high sensitivity always falls into neurodivergence, but I did have a guest early on in the season, Dr. Vigeland, who did talk about the huge overlap. So, and again, I used this example with another conversation recently, but what I loved about learning about the American with Disabilities Act is that they created ramps for people in wheelchairs, but it helped people who were temporarily in crutches. It helped people who were pregnant. It helped people who had other mobility issues, people who were aging. So you going through and making sure that it's set up for autism, for ADHD, helps everyone else. Because sometimes you just show up in an off day.
Yes.
And you need a little bit more support. And that is part of being human.
Absolutely.
Well, it's been such a joy to catch up with you. I'll make sure to link your website. Are there any promotions that you like us to share?
I think if people are on Instagram or TikTok, you can check me out there, post some stuff to be helpful as much as I can. My handle is Finance with River.
Perfect. Well, once again, thank you so much, River, for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to talk to you.
It was such a joy to meet with River and hear all about their journey. River showed us that within capitalist systems, we can find ways to resist, to care for one another, and to imagine something beyond isolation. Whether it's rethinking credit as a tool for solidarity, building group learning spaces, or simply slowing down to journal about our feelings, these practices open the door to collective well-being. Thank you for joining me on Highly Sensitive Money. I'm Diana Giselle Yanez, and I hope this episode helped you see how money and sensitivity can work together while honoring our interconnected well-being. We have the power to create a system where everyone's needs are met because nature is abundant. If you found value in today's conversation, please take a moment to leave a review and share this episode with someone who could benefit. Your support helps this message reach more people navigating their own financial journeys. A thank you goes to Mike Schul for the music and Juan Antonio Nunez for producing. For more resources on bringing money and social justice together, sign up for my monthly newsletter over at allthecolors.net. I also invite you to schedule a free 30-minute call where we can talk about money coaching, investment management, and all things money and social justice. Until next time, remember that your sensitivity and deep thinking is your superpower.